Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 92nd Street Y and the Arnhold Center's Buttonweiser Hall. My name is Jonathan Wall, and I'm the director of the Jewelry Center here at the 92nd Street Y. The Jewelry Center is the oldest open studio in New York City and the largest program of its kind in the nation, offering 55 classes a week with 26 faculty members, teaching everything from classical goldsmithing to wax carving and most everything in between. In July, we are moving all 4 of our studios to brand new state-of-the-art facilities on the 6th floor of the South Building. Pray I still have hair left by that time. There are still some naming opportunities if anyone is feeling particularly generous. I'm happy to take you out for martinis and we can talk numbers. After the second martini, my numbers get fuzzy, so. Anyhow, the Jewelry Center is also the home to the only jewelry residency program for a jeweler in New York City. It offers travel to and from New York City, a studio apartment here in our building, and a studio to work in for a month. We just held our jury a few weeks ago, and I'm excited to announce that this year we are welcoming Bettina Speckner from Germany, and if you're here in August and September and you want to stop by and meet Bettina, you are very welcome. The center is also home to a very special program created here called Teen Gems. Teen Gems offers jewelry education, mentorship, and internships to our outreach school students in New York City. As you know, there is little access to jewelry education outside art schools or family traditions. This program offers an opportunity for our New York City teams to experience the jewelry world and, if interested, to receive support through mentorship, internships, and to move towards a career in the jewelry field. A few of our Teen Gems are here with us tonight, and I'd like to personally welcome them here. Thank you for coming. Both this talk and Teen Gems are generously supported by the De Beers Group, and as always, a special thank you to Sally Morrison from De Beers, wherever you are. Now for our event at hand, it is my pleasure to introduce our talk and the panel this evening. The author of the book that inspired this talk, The History of Diamond Engagement Rings, A True Romance, is Marion Fasel. Marion is not only a really good friend to the 92nd Street Y, she has written 11 books focusing on 20th century jewelry design over her decades-long career as a jewelry historian. The History of Diamond Engagement Rings, A True Romance, her most recent publication, was released in December of 2024. In 2021, she acted as the guest curator for Beautiful Creatures, jewelry inspired by the animal kingdom at the American Museum of Natural History, and wrote an accompanying catalog published by Rizzoli. Marion publishes stories about history and contemporary trends weekly in the Adventuring newsletter, which is now on Substack. Everyone note that. Christopher Young is the Vice President and Creative Director for Creative Visual Merchandising, Events, and the Tiffany Archives for Tiffany & Company. He is responsible for the global creative development of all brand storytelling, creative development, window displays, product presentation, and the Tiffany Archives. Anything else at Tiffany's that you do? Christopher curated the Vision and Virtuosity exhibition at the Saatchi Gallery in London in 2022, and the Tiffany Wonder exhibition at the Tokyo Node Gallery in 2024. He has contributed to numerous publications on Tiffany, including Celine Volumes, Windows at Tiffany & Company, Vision and Virtuosity, Crafting Victory, the Tiffany Landmark, and Tiffany Wonder, as well as the Tiffany Archives, published by Stadel. Beautiful book if you haven't seen it. And last but not least, Benjamin Zucker, one of the world's leading gem dealers. Benjamin Zucker is also a collector who, over the years, has assembled an assortment of rings that form a timeline dating back to antiquity. His jewels have been featured in exhibitions and several museums, including the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and in publications such as Diamonds, the collection of Benjamin Zucker. An author and novelist, some of Benjamin's books are Gems and Jewels, A Connoisseur's Guide, Blue, and a novel for the forthcoming Red, a novel. I'm really happy to have these 3 people on our stage, and I'm so excited to hear more about the history of engagement rings. Please welcome them.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you, Jonathan, for that wonderful introduction. It is always a privilege to be here at the 92nd Street Y, and I'm so glad to be here once again this evening. And Jonathan did quite a long introduction, but in addition to what he said, I just felt honor-bound that I wanted to welcome the Teen Gems group who came tonight. Welcome to jewelry. It is a wonderful world, and I hope you stay and enjoy it. I am overjoyed to be here on this stage with these two gentlemen, and you heard a little bit about them from Jonathan, but I just needed a little bit of visual before we get underway because they are both so special and unique. And when I started writing this book on the history of diamond engagement rings, I really wanted to go to the source. And so in modern times, what do? You do a little digital deep dive. And I did that, and I started, and what kept on coming up? Benjamin Zucker, Benjamin Zucker. Everything is attached to Benjamin Zucker. Thank you. It's true. And I said to myself, but I know Benjamin Zucker. I've known Benjamin Zucker my entire career, and I reached out to him, and I had just the summer of my life last year spending time at his desk and talking, and he's been so generous with his time. But I wanted you, Benjamin, if you could speak a little bit about the jewels that have passed, not all of them, but some of the jewels that have passed through your hands, like the ones that we're looking at in this book cover and the Duchess of Devonshire.
Sure. When you see the ring on the right of the cover Diamonds, which is a book of the diamond rings, I've always been fascinated by how things begin. And I made perhaps 30 trips to India buying stones, and I used to stop off in London and then purchase these diamond rings, which gave me a clue. I mean, what is it about the diamond that's so extraordinary? And if you examine and you look at this ring with the 5 perfect uncut octahedral diamonds in it, and you visualize in the 16th century a Venetian jeweler who had an immense stock of incredibly white, clear diamonds, and he was able to put them in this ring. And when you move the ring, you not only see that shock of white light back to you, but you also see the play of color. And light is everything in jewelry. And then on the left, well, they had these rings at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, which was, for a collector, the trifecta squared. They were all in the case. And then the Met said to me, after I got calmed down a bit, well, here are your rings. Would you consider giving us a piece that's in the case? So I knew what was happening. It was big trouble. I said, which do you want? And they said, well, which would you give us? And then I wrote on a piece of paper the Duchess of Devonshire piece, and they said, what did you write? And I said, what you're thinking. And they said, the Duchess of Devonshire. So that's the greatest. I mean, it brings everything in. Here's the Duchess. Here's this thin white diamond that accentuates the image of her. And it comes from a volcanic uproar, so to speak, high pressure, a twisted macle that was split and intensifies the image of the Duchess of Devonshire. So you have all the elements of light and the personal relationship of the jewel. And you can see this on display at the Met today in the Indian department.
And I suggest everyone who has an interest in really old diamonds to track down this book because it was really my favorite resource. It's a wonderful book, and it has diamonds from dating beginning
3rd century.
3rd century, and then we get up to the more 18th century.
Right.
18th. It's a beautiful book. And then Christopher. From your perch at Tiffany, I mean, you do a million things. We've already heard about this. But you've been really active in the last several years telling the story about Tiffany. And can you tell us just a couple of ways that you've been doing that?
Well, I don't think that you can. There's quite a few people here tonight, my colleagues from Tiffany, so thank you for joining, I have to say. And I don't think you can work at Tiffany if you don't love diamonds. And For sure, our diamond heritage is an important story to tell. I think that we can't talk about the diamond engagement rings without talking about Tiffany. But in exhibitions and in publications, it's been an amazing journey to research maybe the stories untold or the jewels untold. I think it's you who said once, behind every jewel is a story. And when you put together an exhibition of 500, 600 pieces, that's a lot of story to tell.
It's something we've really enjoyed. And now, before we really dive in, I wanted to say, when I started this book, in the process when I start any book, I knew this would send everyone reading this slide, but anyway, here we are. I begin to go out into the field because a lot of jewelry history is really still oral history. So you have to talk to people. And I find people like Benjamin and Christopher, my friends, and I talk to other people that I respect and admire and sources that I've talked to for many other books and exhibitions. And you kind of workshop your ideas and see what they know and see where the jewelry is. You kind of have to find where the bodies are buried in jewelry. And so I ask people, what do you know about the history of diamond engagement rings? And of course, present company excluded and another core group, I got a lot from people I respect and admire, I don't know a lot. I can't wait for your book. That's great. And then another thing that people often said to me was, that's a De Beers thing, right? So they weren't aware or never delved into a further history. This idea is ubiquitous. It is all over the press that De Beers invented, as you can see in these quotes, diamond engagement rings. And really, of course, what they're talking about is the incredible phrase, the tagline, "A diamond is forever," which was written in 1947 by Francis Garrity, a copywriter at NWR, which was hired by De Beers, when there was the marriage boom after the war. So to look at diamonds this way, and these are contemporary stories that I have up here on the screen, and to look at diamonds this way is really to lose 400 years of story. So that troubled me. And one thing, and it's always slightly conspiratorial, these stories, and one thing it's always mentioned is De Beers was somehow in cahoots with Hollywood. I thought, that's insane. There's never an A-list name given. And Hollywood was already there. It's almost like diamond engagement rings were invented for Hollywood movie stars as well. And this spread you're looking at is from the book, and it has Clara Bow, who is literally getting engaged in front of cameras to her, nightclub boyfriend in the 1920s, and above her is Marlene Dietrich in Blue Angel, 1930, and Joan Crawford. And there's a movie called The Ruggles of Red Gap, which was nominated for an Oscar. And you can see, it's very clear that long before 1947, engagement rings were a well understood part of the narrative and part of a romantic story for any couple. And then there's this, if there was any doubt. This is, of course, Gloria Swanson in 1924 in a famous, Art Deco image taken for Vanity Fair by Edward Steichen. And if you look closely at her finger, she has on her large mobile-cut diamond engagement ring from Henri de la Felice. She had found a nobleman in France, and they got engaged and married. And when they returned to America, they took a tour of the country. It was just such an incredible, she was royalty. She was actual royalty. Minor royalty, but royalty, and we loved it. And back she came, and it's just stylized. It's so clear. She's showing her engagement ring in 1924. And then one other thing, this, idea that this is this grand push from De Beers really began with very much a soft sell. This is a 1940s advertisement with insets from the page itself, and it features a painting by Pierre Hinault. There were paintings by André Derain. Salvador Dali's paintings were used in it. So De Beers was kind of creating a cultural impression that, diamonds are artistic. The text is very flowery, also written by Frances Garrity. You know, she says things like, your diamond need not be expensive. The idea of the 4 C's, which had been invented by the GIA in the 1930s as a learning device, a mnemonic device to teach students, you know, the qualities of a diamond, because before that time, you know, diamonds there was no standardized way of grading them. There was kind of nebulous terms like first water for a perfectly clear diamond, or make well for a great cut stone. And anyway, all of this kind of came to the fore. It was organized by De Beers and certainly amplified at this moment by De Beers with this price range, but none of this was new. It had been going on. And it really was started the first time we saw it in America in 1886 by Tiffany. So Christopher, it's my long runway to get to this moment in 1886. Can you tell everybody what we're looking at here?
Oh my goodness. So we're seeing an example of the Tiffany setting. The Tiffany setting is an icon. It is literally an icon. When you go to your iPhone and you send someone a ring emoji, that's the Tiffany setting. You know, the idea that the 6 prongs that lift the diamond up from the band so that the optimal light and scintillation can occur with that diamond was really something that our founder, Charles Tiffany, who was very interested in innovation, he was very interested in diamonds and in what was happening in different parts of the world. But to edit down all the elements that made up a diamond ring at that time, 1886, this is very early for such a modern, minimal design. And yet it has remained the same. You know, we still look to the Tiffany setting as the icon of the diamond engagement ring. And what I think is interesting about this slide is it's not just the design that was innovative, but the way that Charles Tiffany would sell the Tiffany setting. You're looking at an image on top that shows a little folded piece of paper with multiple numbers written on it. And this was one of the ways that people would buy diamond rings, when they were not in New York. And what I find interesting, when we really, as an organization, started exploring our .com part of our business, and I remember being in meetings and people saying, who would buy a diamond ring online? Who would actually do that? Well, the truth is, in the 19th century, people were purchasing rings remotely. When you would be sent a small piece of paper like that with the different prices, and you're looking at everything from $50 to $325. And so Tiffany's offering a range. This would be folded up, this would be sent away, and 1 or 2 might be selected. Tiffany would send it back, and they could keep the ring that they chose. And I love this idea of remote purchasing. Tiffany was the first ever to introduce the idea of a mail order catalog in 1845, which was referred to as the Blue Book. And the Blue Book is still very active today. This week we have our Blue Book event in New York. But I also like that lower piece of paper, which has a series of holes. And it allowed the wearer to place her finger through the different holes to determine her ring size. And so if you weren't, in New York City in, 1886, you still could, say you're in San Francisco or you're, in another part of the country, you could still acquire your diamond ring from Tiffany in this fashion.
I mean, it's just such an innovative way to retail at the time,
Charles Tiffany was all about innovation, and I think the minimal design of that ring ushered in a kind of modernity to jewelry design in general. But for sure, the various ways that the ring was sold and the different ways that the rings have been displayed, and we'll get into some of that.
Yeah.
It's quite fascinating.
It's just astonishing if I can make the slides work, great. It's just astonishing how incredibly long ago this happened. This idea that people feel is modern mid-20th century was happening at the end of the 19th century with Tiffany. I mean, it was the Gilded Age. Yeah. It was 10 years before Alexander Graham Bell invented the telephone, and Thomas Edison patented the incandescent light bulb. The year the ring launched, the Statue of Liberty opened to the public, and Coca-Cola was introduced on the shelves in the grocery store. Yeah. So, I mean, what was happening? Where is Tiffany in terms of its place in New York? What are we looking at that we can still see today?
Oh my goodness. Well, you talk about the Statue of Liberty. Tiffany and Company designed the invitation to the inauguration of the Statue of Liberty. I mean, Tiffany's been involved with so many of the landmarks of New York City. It's astounding. But this is an image of the Union Square store, which was our third location. And during the Gilded Age, this building still stands. You can see it behind a glass facade. And it's in Union Square. And this was our big landmark when Union Square was considered uptown. And, you know, it was at this location that so much was born. And I know we're here to talk about diamond engagement rings, but sometimes when we look at images from the 1893 World's Fair, all of those pieces that we brought to that Chicago World's Fair were photographed first in that building. And the team of archivists that we have at Tiffany are always looking at the background to try to figure out where in the building did they capture those photographs, because everything was shot. You know, photography was new, but it was a great way to record the spectacular work that we were offering. The reason we have the 1876 Blue Book, and I was mentioning that mail order catalog, our Blue Book, in 1876 there was a centennial exhibition in Philadelphia. And it was Tiffany had a really large display of diamonds at this exhibit. It was published then that the number of people who saw diamonds for the first time could be counted by the hundreds of thousands of people. Most had never seen diamonds before. So Tiffany really was instrumental in introducing them to this continent.
And just on this note, because people might be wondering, on this Tiffany Blue Book cover that we're looking at here, it says Paris, London, and Geneva. Mm-hmm. This might
a global luxury
Union
brand.
Square, and Union Square.
Yeah.
I mean, were these offices or?
We had buying offices in Geneva. Of course, we were very involved with watchmaking, and in Paris we were selling. We had buying offices in London, but for sure the Paris store was. I mean, we could go on about it. I want to keep it tight, but the Paris store was very interesting.
I feel like I could switch on the Paris store because what was happening.
Yeah.
On this note, it's like I wanted to bring in things like what Christopher's about to explain to us with the French crown jewels, because it's not like engagement rings sprouted up out of no context. There was a great range of context happening in jewelry, and certainly at Tiffany. And this is always something that, still, there was recently the story in the New York Times, why are the French crown jewels in New Jersey? Why are they, Christopher?
Well, let's just say, I mean, the thing that's beautiful about this story is that when the French crown jewels were up for auction, which was the year after the Tiffany setting was introduced, which I think is quite interesting. So totally. 1887. Charles Tiffany, of course, is fascinated by the idea that regal diamonds can come to America, something he can offer his clients they could never get from anyone else. And I know we're going to have a little conversation about how that worked out. But the idea that the French crown jewels would come up for auction was quite a moment. Charles Tiffany made headlines by acquiring more than 1/3 of the lots that were for sale, and he purchased these. Sometimes broke up the lots, brought them back to New York. In some cases, some were resold to his clients the same day. Joseph Pulitzer being one of the clients who immediately bought a three-strand diamond necklace for his wife. But for sure, I think the sale was in May, and by October, everything had been sold.
Wow.
We were 100 years out from the American Revolution, but we really need some crown jewelry in America.
But how do we have them? So it's part of our heritage, though.
It's true.
It's something that at Tiffany we're proud of.
Very.
We love to be able to tell that story, and of course our ties to France continue.
Yes.
And so it makes sense that we continue to lift up our very long history with France.
And they're in New Jersey. Can you say why? We know why. The New York Times said.
Well, they're in New Jersey when they're in safekeeping, but we often have them on
Which is where the
display.
archives are located.
Undisclosed location.
In New Jersey. Yeah. It's a big state. They're not going to find you. But, more importantly, I hope this is all piecing together. I'm trying to build this narrative that, the engagement rings didn't happen it wasn't pulled out of the clear blue sky, and certainly not at Tiffany. And, of course, this is the Tiffany diamond.
Yeah, which was discovered in 1877. 1878, Charles Tiffany acquires it in Paris. And at that time in Paris, he has a consultant that later helped him with the acquisition of the French crown jewels. But he works with George Kunz and identifies a very important diamond cutter that I read about in your book called Yellow. So perhaps you can take that story from here.
Sure. I mean, it's a mystery that Tiffany acquired this rough, and there was a great diamond cutting firm named Morse in the United States, and they were able to cut diamonds in an incredibly symmetric and also brilliant way. And all of a sudden, the person who got the job was a person named Eknayan, who was an Armenian cutter in Paris, and he was in his 20s. So, so much of jewelry history is really trying to put yourself in a situation. Here's Kunz, it's his first job that when he comes to work for Tiffany, they sent him to Paris. And I believe that Louis Comfort Tiffany, who was the great jewelry designer and the son of Charles Tiffany, was there. And you have this rough diamond, and Morse doesn't get the job. I couldn't figure it out. And at the same time, instead of cutting the diamond in a brilliant way, it's cut in a way that mimics probably two of the great gems, which are the Hope Diamond and the Regent Diamond, which is now in the Louvre. And if you cut, the way Eknayan cut it was, the bottom of the stone, which is the culet, acted as a mirror. And outside, radiating from the culet, were straight lines, facets, and they were stellated in the form of a star. So when you look at the top of the diamond, you see a star pattern. But when you look, and one of the trips, it's a must-do, I always try every 6 months to see the Tiffany diamond, it's such a shock of yellow that you can almost not see the facets. That was Eknayan's theory, that if you mimic the stellated cut and the high crown and the small table, you have, and I have a small diamond that's yellow that I know was cut by Eknayan, and it's up at the Peabody Museum that's been redesigned at Yale. That's worth a tour also, because there too, from across the room, all you see, it's like a searchlight from an oncoming car on a cloudy night, is color. And it's not the brilliance, it's not the scintillation, but it's that color. And there was Louis Comfort Tiffany, a painter, a designer. His favorite color is yellow. It's a genius that once Tiffany cut this stone with Eknayan, he became the advisor to the crown jewels. He had such a deep knowledge that he guided Tiffany, and then they had this marketing genius, and they had this artistic genius. Those combination is just incredibly fortuitous.
Yeah, I mean, you can, my mind is reeling back to last summer when I was absolutely on the edge of my seat in Benjamin's office, and he was telling us this story because the cutting of the Tiffany diamond is such a legend to those of us in jewelry. I mean, Charles Louis Tiffany buys the rough. He sends his young George Frederick Kunz off to Paris.
And I mean, when you think of
and then
Kunz,
Benjamin's like, oh, and Eknayan cut it. And it's like, what? We know the person. So it's really such a piece of the puzzle. And he was also young, right?
He was young, and Kunz himself got the job at Tiffany because when he was in his teens, he collected gemstones by the base of the George Washington Bridge being built, and then he took those to Tiffany, said, buy these, and they said, well, why not work here also, which he did.
Yeah, I mean, he was 22 when he oversaw the cutting of the Tiffany.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how young he was.
Yeah.
But to think that you would take that very large, I mean, nearly 300 carats of that yellow rough and not cut it for size, and not cut it for brilliance, but to cut it for that smoldering inner fire, I think it sets the course for Tiffany's very romantic connection to diamonds that would continue to today.
Well, I think it's extraordinary that the gem has never been sold, and that Charles Louis Tiffany named it after himself.
Yeah.
Well,
Ish.
it's the Tiffany diamond. I mean, it's always been the sort of soul of our company. I mean, from 1878 to today, it's on display in a public manner.
Yes.
It's on the main floor today. I saw it today.
Yeah.
And it's there for all to enjoy. So.
Yeah. So we can, in our timeline now, we can mark the moment with absolute authority that 1886 is the beginning of modern engagement rings. But engagement rings go back much further than that, much, much further than that. You can go back to the Renaissance. And this is a painting, a goldsmith in his shop, 1449. It's at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And I fell in love with it. I kept on showing it to Benjamin in my frequent trips to his office and saying, like, why isn't there a diamond ring in here? Why isn't there a diamond ring in here? Well, there is a diamond ring in here. It's the inset. It's on the ring bar. I love this because it looks like if you go to any jeweler's shop today, you can kind of envision this scene. It hasn't changed. And the thing is, in Renaissance paintings, diamonds were painted black. And Christopher, you have to tell everybody what happens to you sometimes in the window display when diamonds are painted black.
Well, I oversee the windows at Tiffany as well, and I have, that was how I began my journey at Tiffany. When you display a diamond ring, and I've displayed more diamond rings than anything else, you have to study the way the light travels through the stone and into your eye. And the big mistake that people make when they're designing windows is that they have the lighting too far forward, and then they bring the product forward. What happens when you take a diamond and light it from the side is all of those mirrors on the inside, the facets act like mirrors, reflect into each other. But if you get the shadows from the side, it turns black. And this is one of the mistakes that you have to move the diamond back so that you can get light into the facets, so that light comes back, and that's what meets your eyes. And we study this when we design window displays. But if you don't do that, you get a black diamond.
And you'll see that in a lot of photographs of diamonds. You'll see the blackness. So this is, also scholars just know that diamonds were painted black in Renaissance paintings. And, often they'll just cite because they didn't, have that fire and brilliance that we think of as diamonds today. And just for reference, this point-cut diamond with the sort of petal mounting around it is in the book. And I wanted you to see what the rings on the kind of, tubes look like in real life. And Benjamin, so we don't know with certainty that these are engagement rings, but engagement rings, I believe they are. I don't know. 1449. We don't know the exact first date, but what is a point-cut diamond?
A point-cut diamond is a octahedral diamond that's picked up, so to speak, or dredged for in the waters in India. excessively rare, coming from a hard rock, mountainous, volcanic site, which in India, in the case of Golconda, for example, they never found the original site. So you've got this trickle of diamonds, super rare, and they come out, and it's an uncut diamond is still a crystal. Most of them would look like pebbles, and you wouldn't really know what they are. But if they're really pure, you can take them up to a raking light, and they will split into technicolor patterns. And that was the magic, I think, for an Indian diamond dealer. That's what they would look for, the most pure and most free from any inclusions. And then the stones would trickle again to Europe. What amazed me about Marion is that so many people, this painting is in the Lehman wing, there's a special room, and it has this painting in it. And no one has really noticed or commented about this blow-up of the ring that she studied. And I once took with my sister, Margot, a course on the Lehman collection. And you could come every week, and they would take a treasure out from the window, and either a majolica plate. One day, to my astonishment, they bring this painting and put it in a table, and 10 of us looking at the painting. And I looked, and you could make out that these rings, it looked kind of like a diamond, but then when you really noticed it, I mean, this is incredible detective work.
Thank you. I was very determined. It is a problem, though, because often if you read this entry in the Metropolitan Museum of Art, or if you look at any Renaissance paintings and you think, my God, is it an engagement ring? Please let it be, for me. And they don't say, the art historians are not often diving into the specifics of diamond rings. And so we don't know if that I mean, it's gotta be, it just, we think so.
If we meet again in 10 years,
yeah,
or sooner, there's gonna be some spectroscopic study of the gem, and
yeah.
You're gonna be proven to be correct.
Well, I mean, what else could it be? But
yeah.
We do know this. Okay, so this we do know. In 1475, this manuscript is celebrating a wedding banquet of Costanzo Sforza, Lord of Pesaro, who came from one of Italy's most powerful ruling families, and he married Camilla d'Aragona of Naples in May of 1475. And this manuscript was put together celebrating their wedding. And this guy holding the torch is Hymen, the god of marriage, and I hope you can see it, but on his tunic is the same kind of point-cut diamond that is, in the torches. And confirmed, 2 wills, 2 hearts, 2 passions are bonded in one marriage by a diamond. So this is 1475, and this is my motto for this talk. If Benjamin Zucker had been their jeweler, their ring would have looked like this. Could you tell us about the ring that we're looking at here? It's another one from Benjamin's collection, just the motifs and the...
And it's interesting because you can see one section, one facet, as being black. So it
Yes.
makes sense that a Nederlandse painter would paint the pictures of rings delicately with one facet or 2 facets black, highlighting again the shape. But here, what makes these medieval rings so beautiful to me is that it's not only the crystal, which is magical, also the sense that inside the crystal is another form of the light that's beautiful. And then finally, this fleur-de-lis pattern, delicate enameling, and then when you get a ring that the enameling is slightly worn off, I mean, you say to yourself, it's centuries, and even ourselves are a little shabby around the edges. I mean, the fact is, it's extraordinary. Such a thing has survived.
Yeah, it's really true. I mean, so often when I was doing press for this book, people would say to me, like, why the diamond? And I mean, I did not have Benjamin's poetry. I was like, it's a good question, But I would generally say the light, you know, because sometimes diamonds, this is another one of Benjamin's rings that I want to talk about just before we move over to the painting. And again, what is happening with the setting there? Why are we looking at it that way? This is proven to be an engagement ring, and it has some symbolic motifs in the enamel.
Yeah, I mean, it's again the most delicate, the hardest substance that cuts glass, and it's contrasted to these forget-me-nots that are the most evanescent of substances enameling. And you've got to get the heating of the enameling is so delicate, and so you have something delicate, something forever, so to speak, a diamond so powerful, all in one creation.
And you said to me the other day that that was possibly foil-backed. That's why we're seeing that light on this.
Yes, and that will sometimes, according to Cellini's work on goldsmithing, that it's as much the art of the craftsman to put the exact foil underneath it, but sometimes diamonds aren't foiled and they're glorious still.
Yeah, for sure. And then this painting, I love this painting. This is Mary of Burgundy. Mary of Burgundy was married in 1477, and she was proposed to by Maximilian, and she was, her hand was highly sought because she was inheriting the land of her father, Charles the Bold. It was a great property, so many people were in search of her hand. But Maximilian, Archduke Maximilian, won it, and he gave her a diamond. And you can see it's on her right hand. It's on the third finger of her right hand. There's several reasons why rings are worn on certain fingers in the Renaissance and times leading up to the 20th century. And one belief was that in the right or the left hand, there was a vein connected to the heart. They had no knowledge of the circulatory system. This does not matter. These details do not bother them. And the idea actually went back to ancient Egypt of a ring, wedding ring being worn on that finger. Anyway, so there she is in her ring. And so people point to this and they say, this is the first diamond engagement ring. This idea has absolutely snowballed to being an avalanche online. And there's also a letter. And it says, it was one of the advisors to Archduke Maximilian, and it says in the letter, at the betrothal, your grace must have a ring set with a diamond and also a gold ring. I don't know. I mean, when I read that, I thought, this doesn't sound like the guy that had the greatest idea in the history of jewelry. You know what I mean? Like, this is how you're going to win Mary and all this land. You're going to give her a diamond ring. She'll love it. No, it didn't sound that way to me. And it didn't sound that way, we're back, with George Frederick Kunz, who said in his book on rings, which I happened to open on Benjamin's desk one day when I think he took a call, and I was like, oh, why wasn't I looking at George? It was one of the original copies of George Frederick Kunz's book on rings, and he said of this moment and this advisor's letter, this book I think was published originally in 1917, the use of a diamond ring for betrothals seems to have been general toward the end of the 15th century for royal personages, at least to judge from that letter. Can you tell us a little more about George Frederick Kunz's activities? He's off cutting the Tiffany diamond.
I mean, that's a great way to start, right?
Yeah.
I mean, well, not only is he, perhaps the father of modern gemology, but he introduced so many firsts in that space. But he also was quite a writer, like yourself. And I mean, he published over 300 articles and books about gemstones, North American gemstones, but also natal stones and their relationship to the zodiac and the mystical and magical qualities of stones. I mean, he was absolutely obsessed with researching, as you are. And I think it's quite
on
interesting.
Benjamin's desk, opening
Well,
it, I'm like, oh, there it is.
The two of them
We
together
agree.
is a very long conversation, let me tell you. But so the book on rings, I think, is one of many that he published that delves into the history. I mean, he was able to research these, and I think that he's looking at this date, which is 1477, of it being a somewhat commonplace practice, I think is very important.
Absolutely. And yeah, that was gold for me. And then just to move on, the point cut diamonds, remarkably, I found several point cut diamonds, and we've looked at a few here tonight, but after the point cut comes the table cut. And this is Eleanor of Florence, the Duchess of Florence. It's from the National Gallery of Prague. I mean, this is literally one of my favorite paintings in the book. I found it. They identified it as an engagement ring, a betrothal ring, a synonym, same idea. She was married to Cosimo de' Medici. Now, a lot of engagement rings in Renaissance paintings are, from the past. You will see them on the third finger of the left hand. The Italians like to wear it on the first finger. And according to the National Gallery of Prague, and others have said the same, this is because they're kind of saying, Medici is off fighting in Tuscany. They're all trying to get the land. She's left home alone a lot, and she wears the ring here because it is a symbol of strength in the union, which I kind of like.
I love that.
Because, yeah, a lot of times you just get fidelity, which just means loyalty in the marriage, but this is, we're strong, don't mess with us. Can you tell us, Benjamin, what is a table cut diamond as we move on?
Yeah, you take one takes the pointed diamond and you put it down on a wheel which is impregnated with diamond dust, and you press down. You don't actually cut, you just press through the pressure, and that wears down the point so that the top of the diamond looks like a table. And it sounds simple, but you needed the wheel to come in existence probably in the 14th century. And then these diamonds were so valuable. I just wonder who had the first idea. But over centuries, you would be getting these different heights for table cuts. And it had suddenly an incredible property because instead of just showing the whiteness, the absence of any nitrogen in the stone and showing the stone as white, you would be splitting the white light into more prismatic colors. And especially by candlelight, wearing these table cuts, suddenly it really was so bright and such a beautiful, what the GIA calls fire.
May I ask, do you think that at such an early age they must have been aware of inclusions to be able to take down that top point? Do you think that was something they were able to foretell?
I think it was really about color.
Okay.
And when you first of all you realize the diamond itself is precious,
Yeah.
but then the whole part of the cutting, those are the artists of our world, the diamond world, and they tinkered around. But they were under heavy pressure from the owners of those crystals. But I think it was primarily almost a technical, and then there'd be a genius cutter, like there is in New York. There's maybe a handful of great diamond cutters, or Eknayan.
Yeah, it's amazing. And the fact that they kept on searching for the light and cutting, these are questions we really don't have answers to. This painting is about 50 years before the Duchess of Florence. It's just another nice Italian Maddalena Strozzi. It's by Raphael. It's part of a wedding portraits. It's a pair of portraits at the Uffizi. And again, I was just reliant on, searching, from my desk in New York, but digitally. Not every museum in the world is the Metropolitan Museum of Art, let me tell you. Searching for these things is not easy. It is digging through the museums. These are not Google searches. But anyway, here's Maddalena, and it is confirmed. She's wearing a table cut. The painting, it's Raphael. It's black. Anyway, there she is in her table cut diamond, which is a masterpiece. And if anyone's going to Florence, they can see that there. And, kind of jumping ahead here, but these rings were important to me in the book. 17th, 18th century, a lot of development in diamond cuts, a lot of shapes that we know today got underway. But these are rose cuts, and this ring on top is the engagement ring of Elizabeth Barrett-Browning. I nearly died. I found it, I was searching for, because another kind of thing that people like to say about engagement rings quite often, I don't know where they're getting their information, is that only royalty had engagement rings until 1947. You can find it everywhere. Anyway, no, so I was looking for who could I find famous lovers that, maybe I can find their engagement ring. I thought Elizabeth Barrett-Browning, and I did Google search it, and it came up on Twitter that from Eton College, there was a post, someone had done a scouting shot, Robert and Elizabeth Barrett-Browning, their papers are at Eton. So they had like a scouting shot of the ring. I got to know the librarians. I knew their summer schedule. The documents photographer photographed it for me. It took 6 months. Anyway, there's her ring. She has forget-me-nots on the side, rose-cut diamond, crowned heart, which was a popular style. There's a cluster ring. It's from the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Rose-cut diamond, New York bride, 1760. How do we know it's an engagement ring? The family donated a room in the American wing, and with all the things they donated, they knew it was an engagement ring, and that's how it's left. And it's remarkable that we know the exact date. And then, if Benjamin Zucker was your jeweler, you'd have this gorgeous crowned heart ring with hands.
With hands, as a presentation, it's extraordinary.
And can you tell us about the rose cuts?
The rose cut would be fascinating because it would be both done in Antwerp, where the emphasis was more on, so to speak, big show, that it wasn't the symmetry of the stone. It was always designed, the rough was cut to look big, whereas in Amsterdam, it was perfectly shaped, and also the bottom often was cut. So you had really a total ball of fire, top and bottom. And when you move your hand, you get even more scintillation, and you get even more fire than you did on the table cut.
I always thought that the rose cut was flat on the back.
A lot of times it's flat, and then in a few times it's both-sided, and there's a real difference in the amount of brilliance. And then the bottom would be open to your finger, and it has always been a feeling that if the stone is open to your hand, then you get the full magic, flowing through you.
It's beautiful.
And the light in the stone, it's all poetry. With Elizabeth Barrett-Browning. And so, by the end of the 19th century, this is, we are in, engagement ring city. That not only are there new styles, we're looking at two old cushion-cut diamonds on the bottom with a cluster and a kind of solitaire with diamonds around. And then we're looking at the top. Finally, I found, miracle, table-cut diamonds, but that was a revival style. Mm-hmm. So they're already doing revival styles of engagement rings, the way there was revivals in art and in jewelry. We have Etruscan revival style, an Egyptian revival style. As all these archaeological digs happened, and there was trends in art, fashion, jewelry, furniture, there were revivals in engagement rings. And as Christopher was saying, the blue enamel ring that you can see with the slight, it's a rose cut with a flat bottom. Someone is enchanted by, women like Eleanor of Florence, and they have their table cluster ring. And then we have this, excessively romantic portrait of, it's called the betrothed, of a bride with her engagement ring. And this kind of, detail on these rings and all this stuff going on, they're all beautiful, but I'm being dramatic for a point. This is the environment. We're back when Charles Louis Tiffany said, "Yeah."
What did he say?
Yeah. He's like,
It's a direct quote.
He's like, I need to be able to give more people an engagement ring.
Well, for sure by this time, diamond engagement rings were a significant part of our business. This image, I love the illustration. It shows inside the Union Square store, and you can see the store just bustling with folks looking at, this particular shopper is trying on diamond engagement rings, I believe, but you can see in the background, all the activity happening then. During the Gilded Age, of course, diamond rings were, very popular, but Charles Tiffany was taking diamonds and placing them on everyday objects like, opera glasses and the parasol handle and, objects of utility as a really convenient way to express your success in the Gilded Age, especially if you did not come from a family, like an old family or a family with a name. This was a nonverbal way. If you were at the opera and you had, diamonds on your opera glasses, it meant that there was a certain level of success. But, I love this image, and also this little ad. I think that, advertising and diamond rings have a really beautiful relationship, and so we wanted to include that one here.
Yeah, no, I love it. But I like also, I hope everyone can see like where the run-up was, where the, the imagination, the new idea, and then the moving forward. And, Tiffany, as we've established, really planted the flag in the engagement ring department in addition to all these other things going on. And when there was this move made up to 37th Street, there was a certain future president who went shopping. Can you tell us about this?
For sure. So after Charles Tiffany died, the location of the Tiffany store moved to 37th Street. That building is still there as well.
Fifth
It
Avenue.
still stands. It's a McKim Mead and White building. It's fabulous, and overseen by Louis C. Tiffany. So imagine, some of the great minds of the time, coming together to conceive of our landmark of that era. And it's absolutely true. Franklin Delano Roosevelt goes shopping for a beautiful diamond engagement ring at Tiffany. He gives it to Eleanor Roosevelt on her 20th birthday. This is, I think, 1904. And, I think that the next day she writes a letter to him saying, and I'm paraphrasing, you could not have found a ring that I could have liked better.
Exactly.
And this is not in our collection. This is in the Roosevelt Library.
Yeah.
But it's quite a beautiful ring.
Yeah, I
2.5
published this
carats,
ring,
something like
I feel like about 20 years ago, and I feel like they have the same picture. I feel like we should make a road trip and go up there and do a fresh photograph. But what's nice
Let's
about
clean
this,
it while we're at it.
yeah, I think there's a little like stickum on the bottom of that photograph. We took it off for the book, but so many things that we haven't been able to discuss tonight that you can kind of see in this is, some of these early diamonds, which are so popular Benjamin's always been with the early diamonds, but they're really having a revival in so many different engagement ring styles. But I love the way that you can see the high table on this. It's kind of like a modified cushion cut, and the diamonds, they're cut by hand. At this time, they really, do you want to speak to that at all?
Yeah, and the idea that they're lifted up and you can see them from every side, turn it over, it has such a more life to it as opposed to being, so to speak, hidden. It's extraordinary. You come back to the love of the stone itself.
Yeah, and the artistry involved certainly in the cutting. And then, we had to have Maryland and what is now the landmark Tiffany, 57th Street and 5th Avenue. We all know the building. You didn't need the full shot of it, but Christopher pretty much blew my mind. This was built in 1940, pre-1947. We all remember that date from when we started talking. And what are we looking at here?
Well, if you can get your eyes off of Maryland for a minute, well, and you can see it in the image. In 1940, when the landmark was designed by Cross and Cross, there were certain elements like the Atlas clock that were on all the stores that, that it's on the facade of the store. But what's special is this high American Deco architecture. This is the time that Rockefeller Center is being built. This is a really important time in New York architecture. But on the front door, you see this medallion. And when I look at this medallion, it's unmistakable. You're looking straight down through into a Tiffany setting. You can even see the culet in the back.
Yeah.
And all the light radiates out from the center, just as a Tiffany setting is designed to do. And I love that image of Marilyn, because you're seeing her there with that glow. I mean, this was an image taken in 1957 by Sam Shaw, who did photograph her quite a bit. This was a year before Breakfast at Tiffany's was written. And here you're still having that moment outside the Tiffany store of, here's where my dreams can come true. I mean, it's a powerful image. I mean, ironically, Truman Capote wanted Marilyn to be in that film. And of course, we know she was not. But I always loved this image because I think that the idea of diamonds are a girl's best friend, and Tiffany's role in diamonds, I think, comes together with this image of Marilyn.
That's great.
It's right there in the architecture for all to see when the doors are shut.
Well, when you see that medallion, you tell me what you see. I don't know, have you ever looked at it?
No, and just, I mean, I wonder, did you suddenly just see it and stop in your shoes, or do you remember that moment?
I do. I'm an illustrator. You know,
Right.
I draw and paint. But when I look at the piece, I see a diamond in the middle. No question about it. A round brilliant.
Round brilliant.
And yet, why does that top and the vertical part not extend on both sides? Because it's the
great.
band.
Yeah.
And so it's very clear to me that all the rays coming out, it's the light coming out of a brilliant cut diamond.
Yeah. So
A house built by diamonds.
a house built by the Tiffany setting and much more. Yeah. I'm so annoyed. I meant to talk about open coolets long ago. This is a big deal. We missed it. I will not nauseate everyone by flipping back in the slides. And I'm aware of the hour, and I know it gets quite late. So this is Roy Lichtenstein's painting, The Ring Engagement, 1962. This is the end of our talk. I think that you can, as Christopher said earlier, the Tiffany setting is definitely the icon of engagement rings. And I hope that this has expanded your view of the history of engagement rings, because we could all keep you here for 5 hours, which we won't. And one thing about, can you just explain what an open coolet is quickly? Because it's important. It's like in jewelry, people are always saying things like, if you're just beginning in the jewelry field, look at the back. Look at the back of the jewel. It's important, and that's kind of 101 what they teach you. But in diamonds, in the historic diamonds, an open coolet is
because normally today, let's say in a round brilliant cut, the bottom of the stone will come to a sharp point at the very bottom, maybe a tiny little bit of flat surface. But the Indians had, the Indian cutters would have a large coolet, and it was thought, they didn't want to sacrifice any weight. But it turns out, actually, it's that mirror reflection it's a really aesthetic choice.
I've never had this before, and I have it now. I'm not sure I understand this question, but we can give it our best shot. We just have 2, so don't worry. The question, I think, is for both of you. Why did the first engagement ring evolve and gem cutting technology? No, I do understand this question. I get this question all the time. Like, you're looking at a pebble.
Right.
And why it's so difficult to cut it. Who's thinking of this olive oil diamond dust on a wheel? How did this happen?
No, very, very few diamonds are so pure, and they're coming from far away, and you also sense, again, with the light, so it's so emblematic. Light is the center of existence. That's what gives the heat to the earth. And you sense on a visceral level, this is royal, this is exceptional, and it's got that incredible power.
The other question is for me. Do you have a favorite ring from the book?
Is that for you?
Yes. I should say all Benjamin's rings are my favorite rings from the book. I couldn't have done that without. No, really, I picked every single ring in the book, so I do love them all. And impossible to decide. But thank you all so much for joining us tonight. I appreciate it.